Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Modern Working Musician. I'm your host, Keegan Peluso. My guest this week is Leighann Colin. She's a longtime friend of mine. We went to high school together. We did marching band together and all that stuff, which we talk about quite a bit. Leighann has a very extensive background in the world of musical theater, so this episode was highly educational for me because I know nothing about musical theater, which is great. So I had a fantastic conversation. She taught me a lot about her career, different aspects of it, for everything from doing regional theater to touring on cruise ships. And we also talk about her transition into the world of speech therapy, which she's diving into right now. So it's absolutely fantastic. I hope you'll check it out. You can find more episodes and all of our stuff at keeganpeluso.com/modernworkingmusician, or find us anywhere on the internet at Modern Working Musician. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you enjoyed this episode with my good friend, Leighann Colin. We're already recording, so we can go ahead and jump in. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Modern Working Musician. I'm your host, Keegan Peluso, and I am here with my longtime high school classmate and friend, Leighann Colin. How's it going?
Hello. It's going great. How are you?
I am doing awesome, thank you. So, Leighann, we talked about doing this way back before COVID. It's on 2020, is that right?
I think it was February 2020, right before.
So it's like 2 years in the making, and we were finally in the same room because you just moved to Austin and all that stuff. So, and we're just going to jump into that here in a little while. I want to go ahead and start by talking a little bit about your career. So you've been doing musical theater since high school or before then? Okay. And then you went to, what college did you go to in New York?
I went to Wagner College, and it's in Staten Island, New York.
Okay.
Staten Island is one of the 5 boroughs. And I loved it, and
Fantastic.
Still have friends there, and enjoyed Staten Island in New York.
Okay, awesome. And you majored in musical theater, is that correct?
I technically majored in theater and speech with an emphasis in musical theater performance.
Okay, fantastic. And then you've recently transitioned into speech therapy, is that right?
Yes, I have.
Okay, cool, yeah. So if you guys don't know, we are from the great Tipton County, about 40 minutes north of Memphis. And Leighann, you're from Munford. I'm from Atoka. We're split by the highway. But you have a very extensive musical theater background, and like Munford is not known for its musical theater. So how did you get into musical theater, being in like a suburban kind of rural area, and how did that work out for you?
Sure. So it helps that my dad is from New York City. My mom's from Munford. So since I was a kid, I've been going to New York, frequent trips, and would go to Broadway shows. And I always wanted to dance ever since I was 3. Been in dance classes across the street from my house. And then as time went on, I got further and further into Memphis, farther commute. But I was just very lucky because my parents love music, love theater. Both of them are musicians. My brother's a musician. And just the knowledge of music and art and theater, I just couldn't get enough of it. And I was a competitive dancer for most of my life and thought I was going to be a principal ballerina. Thought I was going to go to New York City Ballet. Realized I don't have the feet. We call them biscuit feet.
Okay.
So that means you can't get up on the point shoe well. And so I also knew I loved to be a ham, and I really liked, musical theater style. And I sort of, when I was growing up dancing, I was exposed to a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of my dear friends, who also was my teacher, but still one of my longest friends since I was 11, he was really into musical theater from Marvel, Arkansas. And he would always want us to listen to theater albums if we were warming up, or he wanted us to dance to musical theater. And I just it was an easy transition.
Okay.
And then I was competing in the MidSouth Fair a lot, which I don't know if a lot of people know. It's this scholarship program, and it's lots of different acts, whether it's dance, people playing piano, singing, other instruments, variety acts. I did that since probably maybe I was 8. And so through the MidSouth Fair, I got connected with Theater Memphis, and they were auditioning for Cats, the musical, and I was 15. And I didn't know it at the time, but the director was a huge, huge Broadway person. Her name is Mitzi Hamilton. She was original Broadway cast. Well, she was the inspiration for a chorus line, the character Val. This is her life story. She got a boob job and a nose job, and to get basically more parts to be a prettier woman. That is her life story. And Theater Memphis brought her in a lot, and they were auditioning for Cats. And what was crazy at the time, I had been in choir growing up, since middle school, but I never considered myself a strong singer. And to get to the dance portion, which I was very confident in, you had to sing first. And I was a nervous wreck. And there was a lot of prima ballerinas from Ballet Memphis who got cut because they couldn't sing.
Oh, wow.
So I sang Grease. There are worse things I could do. I was so nervous. But somehow I made past the cut. They asked me to dance a couple times. And then it was kind of in God's hands, sort of, we'll see. And I was waiting and just antsy for weeks because also, which is a funny story, Cats is my favorite show. Nobody likes it except me, and it's fine. But it was the first Broadway show I ever saw, and I watched not the 2019 Cats. No. That is trash. I
was going to ask your opinion on that.
No, it's literally the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. The only thing you should watch it for is Ian McKellen, his acting choices. Just watch that part. That's it. Don't watch the rest of it.
We'll just make a cut of Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'd watched the staged filmed version of the London cast or something, I think, for my whole childhood. Like I saw it on Broadway, and then I went home and watched that tape and memorized it. So I knew that show like the back of my hand, even at 15.
Okay.
So when I auditioned for it, I wanted it so, so, so bad. And then I got it, and I was just like, all right, I'm set. And I kind of knew when I was younger that I wanted to pursue theater or dance, but after the whole not being a ballet dancer, I didn't really know if I had, the drive or the talent. But then when I booked the show, I said, oh, I'm set. I'm going to New York City. Like it was just a decision and kind of set me on the course for my New York career.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool too. A lot of kids, when they pick up, like having been a kid before, you're on this quest to find what you're good at and what you're not good at and stuff like that. And for you to get that information that you did about ballet and still just be like quick pivot into something that's still equally related, I think that's very fantastic. And very mature of a young person to do that. Because, a lot of people, I have so many students that, pick up a guitar. They make a terrible noise, like everyone does the first time they pick up a guitar. And they're like, oh, yeah, music's not my thing. So that's really mature of you and really smart of you to just kind of make a quick transition and still, pursue a career in the arts and stuff. Would you say, your time, competing at the MidSouth Fair and stuff, is that what made... is that what helped prepare you? I'm trying to think, word this question correctly. We've talked a lot about on this podcast about learning how to conquer fear, being the harder part than the musical thing. Would you say that was your time in the MidSouth Fair and stuff? Was that way easier for getting you prepared for Cats and getting the role in Cats than the actual musical part?
I think it's just... I don't know I just had a hunger for anything artistic and it didn't scare me. It was exciting.
Okay.
So I was scared to sing. I do remember that, but I knew that I come from a family who's musical. I knew I couldn't be horrible,
Gotcha.
And it also was kind of right place, right time. They even told me I looked very cat-like with my cheekbones and I had eye makeup on and, I was in the best shape of my life at that time. I was dancing at least 4 or 5 days a week after school. So I was in shape. But I think the fear, the more you do something and face your fear, you don't have it anymore. And even, again, after college, I was still kind of nervous to sing and kind of market myself as also a singer and a dancer. And it's just, I had to push myself, just get in the room, do it as many times as you can, and then that fear, it'll be gone eventually, you know? So I think it was just so much, I did so much performing in my childhood that I really didn't.
I got you.
If I messed up, it's like you mess up and you just pick yourself up and keep going, you know?
Okay. What advice would you give to a young person in like rural America right now who's interested in pursuing a career in musical theater?
So I feel like kids are very lucky today because they have more resources and access to look at things. I mean, what did we have? MySpace maybe back in the, I mean, that was 2005, 2006.
Yeah, very early YouTube, I think.
Yeah, like seriously. I think too at that time, that's when early 2000s Chicago, the movie version came out with Catherine Zeta-Jones and Renee Zellweger.
Yes.
And I was just in awe. So I think I was lucky to have parents to expose me to that stuff. But if people don't have family like that, you know, if you're interested, look up stuff, watch a show. There's so many shows on YouTube. Listen to a Broadway album. Listen to, you know, interviews with certain actors, even like in film or TV, like how they got started. And I think even if you just start small, even if you do your community theater, if you take one dance class, and now people are doing stuff on TikTok. I mean, my gosh, it seems like it's easier. I mean, I could be wrong, but it seems like it's easier now to absorb and find things.
Oh, definitely.
So, and I think too, just making connections and having mentors who really care about you, because I still have mentors and friends to this day in Memphis that, like, I consider them family, and they have put me in touch with other people that have also helped me along the way. So
that's fantastic. I really appreciate that. I think one thing that's really prevalent from your story, and we talk about a lot on here too, is just finding ways to practice performing.
Yes.
And I think TikTok is a good one because like you have an audience. Your videos, I think the max is like 3 minutes or something. I don't know. Keith, help me with TikTok. You're the TikTok expert. But you know, like you can practice those things and put them on the internet and receive sometimes really horrible feedback, but you can still receive feedback. So yeah, finding a space to perform in, I think is super valuable.
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, even with TikTok, you have the option to edit, right? And you don't have the feedback from a live audience. So even I was doing competitive dance and theater in Memphis, but even here in Munford, that's why I was in all these show choirs since middle school. That's why I did Munford High School Marching Band. Represent us too.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you about that here in a second.
Because I wanted to be in front of a live audience, and I wanted to be a well-rounded performer of doing a lot of different things. And, you know, marching band at that time did stretch me. I never twirled a flag or a rifle, so that was a whole, you know, rewiring of my brain as well.
Right.
So I think I just wanted as many opportunities, even if it was small and, you know, compared to Broadway or something.
Right.
Just put yourself out there as much as possible.
That's fantastic. It reminds me of a Dave Grohl interview I was watching, and he was like, just play live. If you're good, people are going to find you. So I think that's fantastic. So coming from competitive dance into, I'd kind of like to dive into a little deeper into like your experience with marching band, just because like we were there together. Now, you only did our senior year, right?
I did it junior and senior year, but senior year I just danced. I did not do color guard.
Okay, so you did do color guard our junior year then? Okay, cool. We graduated together, if y'all can't tell. But cool. What was it like going from a competitive dance background into doing color guard and then performing with the high school band?
I think it was just a different mindset, and I was lucky. I did so many, I guess, workshops and competitions and stuff where I'd worked with professionals, and this still was a pretty professional setting at that time. I I feel like I had more body awareness of learning how to twirl a flag or a rifle, and I already had the rhythm and counting, whereas some kids come into the program, they've never done anything like that.
Right.
I think the biggest adjustment was just being in the heat and trying to run across the field. And, I think also having your chin up so high up to the audience was a huge adjustment.
Yeah, I could see that.
And I guess if there was one thing I did not like, it was the weather element about it, because I'll never forget junior year at Bandmasters, because I did color guard and I did some dance solos, and my body just shut down in the cold. Like you stretch, try to keep yourself warmed up. You do a full performance, adrenaline's pumping, and then once that adrenaline's gone, your body's just kind of just stops. But then the cold, I felt like my muscles were cramping up. So that sort of prepared me, okay, if I'm going to continue this, I have to layer up, I have to bring blankets, I have to advocate for myself, because I even think people didn't understand like why I was, I don't know, being a drama queen, but it was like, I'm doing splits on wet grass, I'm in the cold, I don't want to injure myself, I want longevity wise, I want my body to, that's my instrument, that's
Right,
I
totally.
want it to last. So I think that was the biggest adjustment, was just the weather part. And but I really enjoyed it. Had a great tan. I was in killer shape. And I think it stretched me too as an artist. And it's funny, I wanted to do it again senior year, but I was trying to go to theater school, so theater was my number one priority, and I was really grateful to Mr. Troball that he went around my schedule at that time, so I wasn't registered for class, but he was like, we'll go around your schedule, we want you to be the lead dancer.
Okay.
I think that's when we went to Baltimore that year, so yeah.
I think it's really cool how you talk about just treating yourself like, I mean, dancing is very athletic, and then when you add the elements to it, like the heat and the cold and stuff like that, I do think hearing stories like that, like back when we were in high school, the students are treated much more like athletes, like their body is much more well respected as far as like injury prevention and stuff like that. Because like I know most people I went to high school with, like all the drumline guys are back, we have like horrible backs now and stuff like that. So I think that's a really good testament to how times have changed as well. It's like, and I do think I don't follow the marching arts as well as I used to, but it is much more dance driven. It's much more artistic, and I think the things that you were incorporating, I think you were on the forefront of what is really prevalent in that art form now.
Yeah, it was really, I taught Munford this year, and it was, night and day. They know terms, like they know ballet terms, which is so cool. And they have much more body awareness than when we were in school. And it's great. It's great to see that.
I also owe you an apology. I just remembered that you were there. Well, like you were at, this is the season where I had a kid. So like, I remember seeing you at a rehearsal right now, but I was so sleep deprived. I don't remember.
That's okay. Okay.
I remember talking to you from the top of the tower now, so I apologize.
Oh, I figure I was like, oh, he just had a child. My gosh. What?
Yeah. September to this year has been an absolute blur, but oh well, it's been a great blur. I love my child, but yeah. If you have kids, So I would love to kind of move forward chronologically, talk to about your time at Wagner, and like the audition process to get into that school.
Yeah, so it's just times. I don't feel that old, but I guess it's been a long time. But as much as I was trying to absorb theater and stuff, I still didn't know how to audition for theater schools, and now, oh my gosh, all the kids know all the process of auditioning.
Really?
Who want to do it, pursue it as a career. So I knew about Wagner because I did this like college credit course one summer. And I thought I wanted to go to NYU. I was like, I'm going to NYU. And after that trip to Baltimore when we competed, I went to New York, looked at NYU. I was not ready yet mentally to be in the city. It felt very cold and just, I wasn't ready. And Wagner was good because it was a smaller school. We had access to the city, but we still had that kind of community college feel.
Okay.
And it was a beautiful campus. But I knew, NYU, no. Wagner was probably number one. I looked at Ole Miss. I knew I didn't want to go to school in Tennessee, but I still looked at Belmont, Ole Miss, and University of Alabama. And you have to apply for the school, but you also have to apply for their theater program, and you have to audition. And it was very stressful, and I only did 3, but I know I have a friend, she's graduating high school. She did like 25 or something crazy like that. That's a lot of time, money, just anxiety. But that is one area where I don't have any regrets, but I didn't really know how that process worked. So, auditioned for Ole Miss. I got in, but I just knew, like, I didn't want to be in the South. If I was going to do theater, I wanted to be in New York City.
Yeah.
University of Alabama was kind of funny. I had my worst audition, like, ever.
Really?
I was pretty proud of myself. I never let people get in my head, like people who may have been better than me or whatever. And for whatever reason that day, I just wasn't on my game. I think I may have had a cold. This one girl was just getting in my head. I got into the school, but I didn't get into the program. And they said, you can transfer into the program. But then because I bombed that audition, I used my friends in Memphis that I'd been working with at Theater Memphis. Her name's Kel Christie. She's amazing. She coached me with monologues and songs so that when I did my Wagner audition, I was ready.
Oh, that's great.
And that to this day, that's still one of my best auditions I've ever done. And what's funny too, I had a friend from Memphis who went to Houston High School that I grew up doing theater with. He also went to Wagner. So it was kind of nice because the anxiety, we could sort of like just hang out as friends, and it's like, this is fun, we're just doing another audition, and we're together. So it was stressful, but it was also fun. But I think now it's even more competitive. I mean, it's I can't even imagine like doing it now. And I think too, I guess the one good thing about it is they do accept self-tapes. That seems to be the norm now. But I still believe in just going there in person. It's for you to look at the campus. It's for you to meet the staff, to see if you're a good fit. And just to, again, have a chance to perform for someone. But yeah, and I remember even at that time for Wagner, the flight from Memphis to New York was canceled because of weather.
Oh, no.
And they said you could send a tape. And I have the best parents. They drove me to New York City in a day.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
And I think I had to, like, miss school on Monday, but because the auditions were Sunday. But they drove me Friday. We got there, like, late Friday night or early Saturday morning, rested, and then I was ready on Sunday to audition. And then I got the school I wanted. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think I think your school choice and, like, your decisions for that are really prevalent. Me and a lot of educators talk with a lot of older students about college and going to school for music and things like that, and what might be the most elite school or most competitive school. Like, you need to find the college that's right for
Yes.
you. Like and this is not a knock on North Texas or anything like that, but I've a lot of people like North Texas is a school they want to go to. It's North Texas, and it is a great school, but it's not a perfect fit for everybody. And I think you going and visiting NYU and then deciding, like Wagner's more like what I want out of a school. I think that's fantastic. And I think doing your due diligence on what school was best for you is fantastic.
And really, when it comes down to it, it doesn't matter what school you went to. It's more about just you, I mean, some schools may have good networking opportunities, but there's people I know on Broadway that didn't even go to school or went to some college you've never even heard of, So it really, it may just depend on what kind of training you want, what kind of networking you want. But at the end of the day, if you want something and you just have the drive and the talent and just personality to have tough skin, basically, you can do it,
Yeah, totally. There are no rules. My brother's a TikTok famous bird watcher. There are no rules anymore. So what was life like at Wagner being a musical theater major? Now, I guess I want to get a little bit more specific because you outlined your degree a little bit more specifically than musical theater. What was it again?
It was technically theater and speech, but it's hilarious to me because it was to me, I got a Bachelor in Arts, and a lot of musical theater degrees are Bachelor in Fine Arts.
Okay.
I don't know. But I guess it was just a more general degree that did it kind of carries over into like when I got my master's. So I guess a Bachelor in Arts, I still had to take gen ed classes where maybe Bachelor of Fine Arts, it's more focused on the theater stuff and you don't have to take as many gen eds. I could be quoting wrong. I don't know. But I still had to take gen eds, but I had to do so many shows before I graduated. I had to work in the technical side of shows, like do so many of so costumes or lighting or set design, something. And then I had to, the curriculum, I had to have like specific classes before I graduated.
Okay.
But it was great. I mean, I had 2 friends from Memphis go up there with me, which is great. And
That's
then
fantastic.
I still am friends with my Wagner people to this day. I mean, I'm going to somebody's wedding this summer. So we're still a pretty close group. And I think what I liked about Wagner was theater is important, but it's also important to have other interests. And I think most of my friends, that is them. And I at that time, again, my acting and singing, I didn't feel as strong as my dancing, and I think Wagner helped me in those areas a lot. So yeah, and I had a great teacher. Her name's Michelle Palk. She'd been in Seussical on Broadway, other things, and she's just a light, and she had a lot of connections in the city, and we did our showcase at, of course I'm drawing a blank, but one of these really major theaters in New York City for agents and stuff at the end of our college career. So it was good. It was just a good program for me at that time.
That's very cool. Do you have a favorite show that you did at Wagner?
Oh,
We
I
could
did
do
this
top
weird.
3 if we needed
Well,
to.
I did this weird show, but I loved it so much. It's called Goddess Wheel, and the composer for Hair, his name's Galt McDermott.
Okay.
You know the sun, let the sun shine, let the sun
I have a story
shine.
about that.
Yeah, so he wrote that.
Okay.
He was creating this new show called Goddess Wheel, and he did the music for it, and it premiered at Wagner, and it was basically like the Greek play Lysistrata. Have you read it?
Nope, I'm ignorant. I'm
It's
sorry.
okay. So it's basically kind of like, I know this is a PG show, but it's basically at that time the Athenians and Spartans were fighting, and the women of Athens decided to like abstain from sex so that the war would be over. And it's a comedy, and it's really silly. But that was actually one of my favorite things I did. It was kind of like interesting because it was sort of futuristic, and some people who watch it were like, I don't know what's going on. I had a great time. I mean, I loved it.
That sounds really cool.
And it was also cool to create a role. So this was the world premiere, so I got to create a role, and Galt McDermott got to like see me perform, which to me it's like, wow, this is who wrote Hair, like so cool.
That's amazing.
Okay. Yeah. And I did Smokey Joe's Cafe, which is sort of like a review of Lieber and Stoller, so like a lot of Elvis songs. So I got to tap into my Memphis roots.
There we go.
So,
There we go.
Yeah.
So after graduating Wagner, you did some musical theater. You did some like cruise ship musical theater and stuff like that. Before then, was there a point where you were like, I'm going to grind it out to do the Broadway thing? Or did you know sometime in college that like you didn't want to like do the Broadway thing or something like that? And forgive my ignorance, I don't know much about musical theater.
That's okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, like Broadway is like the pinnacle.
Yes.
Okay. So was that the goal, or was it never the goal, or?
It was the long-term goal, but I also knew living in New York is expensive, and I also knew that I wanted to be paid to travel. So when I graduated, I wanted to do, and it's also kind of like a process. So to get on Broadway, you have to become, Actors Equity, part of the Actors Union, and you have to work so many shows where you gain points, and you have to take your equity card, and there are those stories of just some Joe Schmo never done any professional job, and then they make it on Broadway. But anyway, there's kind of a process to getting to Broadway.
Really?
Yeah, and it's also changed throughout the years. That's a whole other conversation. But I knew that I wanted to do ships. I wanted to travel.
Okay.
I wanted to be paid to travel. And so Broadway was the long term, but I also wanted to like have money in the city and also not have to work 5 jobs just to live in New York City. So
Yeah.
I did a few regional theater stuff when I first graduated, but then ships was kind of like, I want this right now.
Okay.
I think I was 23, 24. So I worked for a Norwegian Cruise Line actually as their on-land understudy. So I just got paid to go to Tampa and like learn people's like parts, like their tracks. And if anybody ever got injured or sick, then they would send me to the ship.
Oh, wow.
So it was a good gig. I just got to like learn shows and sit by the pool. And then, but then Holland America came calling and I was cast as a singer dancer and I did 2 ships with them back to back. And then the same company who cast me, so it's Holland America, but it's also a entertainment group called RWS Entertainment Group in New York. They really liked me, so they used me for workshops for future cruise ship shows. So I had a good relationship with them, and cruise ships was still, especially that first contract, because it was so new and exciting, one of the best things I've ever done in my life. I felt like I was paid what I was worth. I got to see places that I would never probably ever get to see. And I got to meet so many people from all over the world, like Indonesia, the Philippines, Holland, England, Croatia, Ukraine. So it was just, I really thrived in that environment. And also I'm a person who loves a routine, and ships are very easy to set a routine.
Okay.
Because you always know what port you're going to be on what day. You always know what days you have your show, so you can also plan like your gym schedule, or, you know, you go out in port or not, or, you know, it was just it was like a paid vacation, honestly,
really
and
cool.
to do what you love. So
Yeah.
I didn't do like musical theater book shows. It was more like review shows. So,
Okay.
and I guess the passengers were mostly for Holland America, like retired older people. So it kind of is funny. It set me up for healthcare actually. So,
Wow.
And COVID. So what's funny, ships are very similar to hospitals and all the things we had to go through in COVID, because they don't mess around. If you're sick, you quarantine. I had to get like a TB test every time I got on the ship. So tuberculosis skin test. We sanitized all the time on the ship. So it really, and at that time I worked with, or the passengers were kind of elderly retired people. So, and then I am now working with a lot of elderly retired people.
Oh, wow.
So it really did set me up. It was the best thing to set me up for healthcare, but also like COVID. I was used to quarantining and stuff.
Oh, wow. That's pretty uncanny. If you would, I'd love to dive into a little bit more like what your typical, I guess if you could walk me through like a typical show day on a cruise ship, what that looks like.
Yeah. So we always did a technical rehearsal in the morning. So sometimes I would get breakfast. Sometimes I wouldn't. I would just sleep and then go to my technical rehearsal. And it was more we had these LED screens. We had a lot of technical stuff on stage that needed to be run. And sometimes we do it full out. Sometimes we didn't. You know, as time went on, we knew the shows well enough. We didn't do it full out. So full out means like at performance level for people who may not know. But so we do our sort of tech rehearsal. Then I'd go to lunch. Then if I, wanted to go out in port, I could. Or if I didn't, I went to the gym or I laid out. I'd nap. I'd get a good dinner, and then I would do my show, and I did 2 shows in a night, and they were usually like a 47-minute show, so we had like a 30-minute break. Sometimes I napped in between shows, but also too, a bunch of us cast members would just like watch The Office or whatever in between shows, and then after the second show, there was something called late night at the Lido, and they usually had like burgers and really good food. Okay. So I'd get something to eat, or sometimes I'd go to the crew bar and hang out with other crew members. And what was great was like crew discounts, like beers cost like 13 cents. It was amazing. So yeah, that was sort of a typical day. And then there was days where we didn't have shows. So the days we didn't have shows, we'd go out in port and explore. And it was really easy to eat well and go to the gym because you didn't pay for it.
That's fantastic.
That was like the best. If you ever want to lose weight and get into crazy good shape, you work on a cruise ship because you don't pay for all the healthy food. You have vegetables, meats, everything for every meal that they provide. You have a free gym. I made friends with one of the trainers who was like he was just a friend. He was helping me get into the shape I wanted.
Oh, wow.
So it was a great time.
Yeah. I know a lot of, and I feel like this could be a recommendation from you as well. A lot of people who graduate from music school, if you're not necessarily sure, you're like single or not, like or mobile, we'll say that, like cruise ships are like the way to go to kind of cut your teeth as a musician and just like go adventuring.
Yes, I tell people I think every actor or musician should do at least one cruise ship in their life because the money is so good, the travel is so good, and you make friends for life. And I even have a friend who is a drummer, Tom Jorgensen. Hi, Tom. He like works for Hamilton now. He works for Waitress. Like his cruising opportunities, I felt like got him connected with now. He's working on Broadway shows and tours.
Wow.
And I think I could be wrong, but I feel like one of his first jobs was working with us on the cruise ship, and he was amazing. So I tell literally every artist, if you can, work on a ship, at least one, and you can say you did it, and if you don't like it, you made some money out of it, you got to travel. So, because it's not for everyone. Like some people, they feel claustrophobic. They, being gone 8 months at a time, that's a long time. And you don't have phone access constantly, like how we're always on our phone now. So it's not for everyone, but I just say, just try it. Because you're paid great, and it's just, it does feel like paid vacation, and you do what you love.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, you're giving me the hard sell. Sorry, wife and kid, I'm going on a cruise ship. Just kidding. Yeah, I'm just kidding. That's really cool, and that's super sound advice too. So after the cruise ship thing, we're getting more to present day. You did a few shows after you got the cruise ship.
So that was kind of like I made my money I wanted to make. Now it's time to fully commit to Broadway stuff. So I did regional theaters, and then which were wonderful. And then I was trying to kind of keep moving forward. So instead of being ensemble, I got like a supporting role or, those kinds of things. And then I wanted a national tour. So I did a Chorus Line national tour, and it was supposed to it did go to Japan. I just didn't go to Japan. It was going to go to Japan as well. So I had been working towards Broadway stuff, but again, like, I love New York. I love Broadway. It's not as easy as people think. It's like people would ask me, why aren't you on Broadway? I said, well, if it was that simple, everyone would do it. But there's a lot of kind of steps, and there's also it's right place, right time, who you know, how you look. I identify more as like a dancer first, but I'm not very tall, and they love tall, leggy girls. And then singers, I guess I still was sort of figuring out where I fit in the singer-actor world, and so it was a great time, but it's hard. I mean, the grind, I went to auditions every single day. I'd go to at least 3 a day. And I have to wake up at like sometimes 4 a.m. to put my name on a list. And there's hundreds of people in this studio. And sometimes you get seen, sometimes you're not because there's just too many people. So I feel like this has been a really positive conversation, but I'm gonna be honest. It was a grind. It was a grind.
Yeah, I actually did kind of want to dive into a little bit, and I mean, to like the politics of that whole scene, and how to navigate it. Which you've already elaborated on, but you talked about like the point system and like
It's changed too because with COVID, everything changed. Okay. So now in Actors Equity, I believe, and my actor friends may be like, that's wrong. Who knows? But now anybody can join the union. You have to pay dues. But to me, that's like that's a lot of people. So there's not as many union jobs as there are non-union jobs. So as a equity actor, I can't work any non-union jobs. But since I'm technically non-union, I can work both. I have the option to do both. So that's the thing. There's they're higher caliber jobs, but there's not as many.
Okay.
And people on Broadway, too, they don't want to leave that gig. Some people just, like Phantom of the Opera, those people have been working years. You know, they're not going anywhere. That's one of the biggest Broadway shows. They're staying.
Right.
So it's also, is there, slots available? But at that time, you would work at equity theaters. You gain some points. I think at that time you have to gain 50 points, and then you have to take your equity card. I think then it changed to 25 points. Now I don't even know what it is.
Gotcha.
But too, with today, you can now join Actors Equity, anyone. But I'm competing with like a college student who's never done a professional show that may like decide to join the union with like Audra McDonald or like Patti LuPone, like the highest Broadway. There's so many people that want to do this. And that is a dream. I want to be Actors Equity, but I just feel like at this time it doesn't feel right or make any sense. And also like paying dues when I'm not even like, it's more stuff I got to pay. It's just so
paying for the chance to be in front of some people and still not actually get paid.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot.
It's a lot, and it's so I did regional theaters, and then I did a Chorus Line national tour where I was a understudy, where I covered 6 roles.
Oh my good Lord.
Yeah. So
you had to learn 6 separate parts?
Yes. And that was I like that stuff though.
Really?
I do. So
Okay.
some people. So also for kids who are looking to do theater, that is a very specific skill that not everyone has, and that can make you very marketable if you're wanting to do Broadway stuff. Is to become like an understudy. It's also called a swing, so you can learn other people's roles.
Okay.
And if that's something you love to do, and you love just having that knowledge and kind of being challenged, go for it.
Okay.
So yeah, I learned 6 roles, and it's not the actual dancing. It was more of like, where do I exit? How do I come on?
Oh, really?
And then there'd be times on tour where I had a lot of people got injured or was sick, so I did multiple rows in a weekend.
Oh my goodness.
And there was one moment I said, wait, who am I again? Because I was doing one part, but I had done a different part the day before, and I was like, wait. I mean, it was a moment of panic. I was like, wait, which character am I today?
Oh my goodness. Did you ever accidentally like say another character's lines on stage or anything like that?
No, but I did go in a different spot. That
really?
was for a different character, but people adjusted to me, and so I did accidentally go in a different spot on stage, but it wasn't that far off. But I was like, I'm in the wrong spot, but it's all right. So
yeah, I'm sure they understood. It's like, she's playing 6 people, guys. Come on. So,
yeah.
Cool. What is, I guess, what are some pros and what are some cons of like doing the regional thing versus doing a touring show?
Regional, I mean, you're in one place, which is nice. You could have a little bit more of a routine. I mean, I actually really liked some regional theaters. They're not really, they could be in the middle of nowhere. Like, I did worked at the Roxy Regional Theater in Clarksville, Tennessee, which, I mean, it's near Nashville, but there's really not like a lot going on. Whereas a tour, you will be in a new city, and sometimes you'll go to cities that don't have a lot going on, or then you'll go to like Los Angeles, Okay. So tour was great with that, but also the biggest thing with tour was we did do plane and bus, but the bus was really, really hard on my body.
Really?
And also the show was already like a very physically demanding show, and then just being on the bus sometimes for hours and hours at a day and then go and perform, it was just a little bit jarring, But it was nice to see, I'd been all over the world with a ship, so it was now kind of cool to see the United States, you know?
Yeah, that's really cool. So you got to tour the world and the country.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You have seen more than most people do in their entire lifetime. So that's fantastic. So I want to kind of transition to what you've got going on now and how these things kind of influence you. Before that, after Chorus Line, any more happenings between what then and now?
So it went to Japan, but instead I went to grad school.
Okay.
And I think before tour I was starting to get a little burnt out in the city, and my ship money was starting to run out, so I had to do a lot of catering and just kind of almost the normal actor New York hustle of working a lot of jobs. And
Gotcha.
and I think I was getting into my late 20s, and I was just starting to, I maybe want a family one day, or, want a house. And you can't really do that in New York on actor salary.
Gotcha.
So before I started working on a Chorus Line national tour, I was doing a lot of workshops in the city. And then I came home from Memphis for like a week and just sort of decided to look into physical therapy and speech therapy. Mm-hmm. And then I toured the University of Memphis and decided I'm just going to apply for the speech therapy program. Just if I get it, great. If I don't, I can try next year. That was sort of my mindset. I just was like, just try something, you know, because I think I just sort of kind of hit a wall in New York. So I applied to Memphis and Ole Miss. That's it. And really, I'm telling you, I did not think I was going to get in. I just thought, I'm not going to get in. So I wanted to practice doing the process. So I took the GRE, and I just happened to be home for barely 6 weeks because I had to start my tour rehearsal. So I was home the month of November and a little bit of October. So I took the GRE, I applied to Memphis and Ole Miss, and I said, I may not get in, but it's okay. I still have another career. I'm set for this year with tour and going to Japan. Mm-hmm. So I did that. And then tour was wonderful because I loved the show I was doing. I loved the friends I made. I liked being an understudy, but there were some things with that company that I just didn't feel like I was valued. Mm. And I just got to the point where it's different when you're 22 and out of school. You can kind of let it roll off your back. But when you've worked in other shows and been treated with respect, you just can't really go back to not being treated with respect. So I think on tour, I just sort of got to a point where I was ready to go back to school and ready for a change. Mm-hmm. So of course I got into both schools. I was shocked. I said, okay, I guess I'm going to grad school. And I even considered deferring for a year, going to Japan or doing another cruise ship. But I think I just thought, I want to do this by the time I'm 30. I want to get the degree. And then if I still want to do cruise ships or whatever, I can go back. But then COVID happened.
Oh, man.
So I fully intended to get this degree and get licensed and then work on ships again. That was my plan. And then once COVID happened, I just fully committed to, okay, this is my second career. Mm-hmm. This is not just get the degree and just have it. Actually try this. So went to University of Memphis. It was a 2-year program. And I want to specialize in voice because I'm a singer and it makes sense. And I also, during my time in New York, I had to see a speech therapist for vocal nodules because it was just, I wasn't taking care of my voice properly. And now I use habits and stuff that she taught me years ago. I still use to this day.
That's
Even
great.
before this, I warmed up in the car.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So I did University of Memphis. COVID hit my last semester and my last 2 semesters. And I wanted to become licensed. So you do this clinical fellowship that's usually 9 months, but again, COVID, I graduated August 2020. So it took me a full year because the patient caseload was kind of low. So it was hard to get. I had to get so many hours and have so many patients and stuff under supervision. And then once I finished that in August 2021, I got my license in Tennessee, New York, and Texas. And that took a while. And now I'm working at Baylor Scott and White Hospital outside of Austin. And I'm working at a senior living facility too. And they're both part-time jobs because I want to specialize in voice. And I applied for this summer vocology program that is kind of competitive. I didn't know. And I got in, so I'm going
That's
to
awesome.
that this summer so I get more intensive training on specializing in voice as a speech therapist. And then, I've also there's another thing called voice clinical fellowships that just at that time with COVID and personal things, I just didn't have the mental, what's the word? I just didn't apply for them because there's too much going on. So I've applied for them too, and I may not get them because I'm technically a licensed clinician now instead of a student, but I'm still applying anyway. And if those would start like in August, so if I get those, then maybe I'll do it. But if not, I mean, I'm really liking Austin so far. It's another arts city that's not New York or Memphis, and I've been curious about it. So yeah,
cool. You're a very you're a world traveler too. So there is a certain like fearlessness that you embrace to go to new locations. That is, this is coming from a guy who literally lives 30 seconds from his parents' house. That's very admirable.
It's okay. I lived with my parents for 6 months this year when I was waiting for my license to process. So it's okay.
Gotcha.
And I think too, I mean, I don't like to be in one place for long, but also the world is so big. I just want to, and I feel like I've only scratched the surface. Like I want to see it, you know?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So,
the obvious question is like, how do you feel that your career in musical theater has influenced your career now in speech therapy?
Yeah, I mean, I love people. I love meeting new people. I feel like I can empathize with people in their situation because I was a patient too, with my nodules. So I know what it's like your voice is your way of making money and you can't do it. What do you do?
Right.
So I would love to see singers or performers where they feel like their world is ending, but really it's not. You know, that's the job of the therapist, is to give them habits to, maintain their voice. And sometimes people need surgery, but for the most part, it's really just creating good vocal habits. And even not in the areas of voice, I guess, again, my cruising days really helped me connect with older people. I think as a kid, I was like kind of didn't know how to talk to older people. And then ships, you have to talk to everyone. Like that is our job. We greet people. And so now I feel like I'm really good. Even if we have completely different like political views, I will find something in common with you.
That's great.
And I think everyone's voice matters. So I think I'm just really good at connecting with anyone.
Okay.
And that's theater helped me with that and kind of put myself in other people's shoes. And then too, just knowing the science behind how all this works is so cool. And I also like love to eat. And so I had to do a lot of, goals having to do with eating. And
Really?
It's like things that we don't even think about. And, for a long time as a performer, we have these myths that like, oh, well, dairy and, certain acidic stuff, they like touch your vocal folds. No, food does not touch your vocal folds. If that happened, you would be choking or you'd get pneumonia. So there's like it's a whole science that's super cool now, and kind of those myths. That's why they're myths. I now found out, but yeah, and I think too having a good ear has helped me. And my brother has perfect pitch, and I've always been very jealous. But I think I probably hopefully have it, but I can hear, especially in the areas of voice changes or pitch stuff, that musicians have that ear rather than people who aren't musicians. So I think a lot of musicians and actors, if they did want to change careers, this is a pretty good career for them.
That's really cool. So you're in a brand new city. You went from Memphis to New York to Memphis. Now you're in Austin, completely new city. And one thing you and I talked about before the interview started was navigating a new art scene.
Yeah.
So, how long have you been in Austin, by the way?
2 weeks.
2 whole weeks. Okay. So how's it going?
Well, it's been going well, and also too, I'm doing all this orientation for both my jobs, so that's overwhelming. But one of my best friends who's from Memphis and went to Wagner with me, he moved there.
That's really cool.
He's doing a lot of theater there, so he's already put me in touch with some people, and even one girl, she's a speech therapist and also is really involved in theater, so that's great.
New best friend.
Yeah, and also I at a grocery store ran into a girl that I did a lot of New York workshops with, and she's from San Antonio living in Austin. So it's like I felt like a lot of signs were like, I'm supposed to be here right now.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I just was super curious what the art scene in Austin is like compared to New York. And so now too, I've already taken a ballet class and I enjoyed it. And I've emailed the person at Ballet Austin saying, hey, I don't know if you're looking for any dance teachers, but I'd love to teach a musical theater class or a musical theater master class on a chorus line because I know the original Broadway choreography. So I think I'm going to meet with her. So I'm just always had that hustle mentality.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like you have moments. Oh, still have moments of like fear of like, oh my God, I just moved to a place where I really don't know a lot of people and I don't know the city and what am I doing? I have those panic moments, but I think when I'm doing something, I feel better. So it's just putting feelers out there. Other friends in New York are telling me, I've just had other friends move to New York, so they're trying to connect me with people. So to be continued, we will see. But I feel like I'm already trying to like take class, see shows there, make connections. So
that's great. I feel like there's been this like recurring theme as we kind of go through your history of your life in musical theater, how you can pivot's not even the correct word because every new change you just add it to your arsenal of like you as a person. So like from the not doing ballet anymore to going into musical theater to not going to NYU and going to Wagner to then not doing Broadway and doing the cruise ship thing. Bye, camera. And so all of that has been just like this one long trajectory of you finding the things that you want to do more specifically. I think that's really fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Just learning to adapt, you know.
Yeah, and you've done a fantastic job of it. And not, like now you're doing speech therapy in Austin, but you're also like you're still doing musical theater, like you have not stopped, and that's kind of what we talked about before the interview was like you have to like if you do the arts, you have to like
fully commit.
You have to commit your soul to it. And that's not necessarily true all the time.
Well, and it's a battle I struggle with all the time. Like there's moments where I'm like, should I just fully commit to doing theater again and go back to New York? But also so much has changed with COVID and self-tapes and everything's so different now. But it's also, I thought I committed to this other career. So I'm trying to find a balance of both. It may not be at the level that I was doing in New York, but I feel like I want to try and find a happy medium.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be fully invested. I mean, obviously I'm fully invested in speech therapy, but yes, I am in therapy, but I talked to my therapist about the past 3 years, there's been this sort of hole in my heart of not doing theater. And it's like, I have to have it in my life for me to function as a human. Like I have to. So even if it's at a small scale right now, which it is because I'm still transitioning into this new career, it's me, like, again, I hustle. So it's like finding a dance class, if I want to do an online virtual acting class for now because of time and money and I'm not in New York, that's available to me. So it's just finding that new normal. And I think everyone had to do that in the pandemic. So yeah, it's okay if you're not, just because you're not fully committed to your craft does not make you less of an artist. I think that's something I have to tell myself every day. Just because I'm not doing it every day does not mean that just goes away,
Yeah. I think that's kind of how our culture is built too. And I mean, I think it's instilled in us at a very early age too. Is like, you play music, you gotta you could be a rock star one day.
Right.
And it's like, if you're not a rock star, then you're a failure. And neither of those things are true,
Oh, yes. I mean, there was moments when I moved back to Memphis, like I was going to grad school and it's very competitive. I didn't know University of Memphis speech therapy program was competitive, but it was. But when I moved back, like when we went to the high school reunion, I was terrified. I didn't know if people thought I failed. I had this whole narrative in my head. I moved back to Munford, like, just sort of, I didn't accomplish that goal of Broadway. That was a big voice in my head over and over. But actually moving back and at the high school reunion, everyone was so nice and like seemed proud of me and just amazed at how much I've done. And I think we're our own, harshest critics.
Oh, totally.
So it's like oh, like that was a moment I was like, oh, I did accomplish a lot of things. I did set out, I did live the dream in New York City for many years. And now I'm doing something different and, just sort of excited to where this new journey will take me. And also people tell me New York will always be there. So even if I'm an old lady and I'm retired or something, if I want to go back and just audition for an old lady role, it will always be there,
That's a very good
So
point. Yeah. And like we've talked about your sense of adventure too, like, and that is just very evident. Like you've always kept that spirit of adventure no matter what you're doing. So,
yeah.
So I have one question that we kind of ask on this podcast every time, or we have here recently. Do you have a favorite failure?
A favorite failure?
If you don't, that's fine too.
In theater or in life?
It
Oh my
could be
goodness.
anything.
I think it may not be my favorite right now, but it will be my favorite later. I think just after grad school and while I was in my clinical fellowship, I was actually working in Greenville, Mississippi, the complete opposite of New York City. And I went through sort of I had two grandparents pass and I went through a very nasty breakup in like the span of like 4 months. It was something
Lord.
crazy. And I was working in a place, the people were wonderful, but I just didn't, the place was not for me. Greenville, Mississippi is not, there's nothing really to do. So I felt just sort of like, I didn't know, I kind of lost myself because I defined myself as the actor. I defined myself as, the speech therapist or the girlfriend or the daughter. And it's sort of like I had to kind of break down my walls and everything and just figure out who is Leighann without the things, without the titles, without the accomplishments. And so being in Greenville I had to really face myself because New York's easy to distract yourself. Even Memphis too. Like there's things to do. You can distract yourself. So I had to do a lot of inner work and really create better habits for myself to make a happy life and within myself, not external things. So, and I'm still picking myself back up and trying to figure out and trust in the fact that I am worthy, just me, even without all the things, without the titles and accomplishments. So I think that's probably my favorite failure because even with all those personal tragedies, there was the recurring voice of like, you failed in New York and like you're failing at this new career. Like it just was like a spiral kind of thing. So I've worked with, I'm pro therapy. I think everyone's a little bit, nuts, and it's okay. And after the pandemic, especially. So I actually work with a therapist and a coach who's one of my dear friends from college. She's like a women's empowerment coach.
That is awesome.
So working with those two and sort of being in an isolating place, I feel like I've made better, happier, healthier habits for myself. And also being aware of when I'm sort of checking out or when I, like stress eat and or when I'm like kind of stopping myself from those negative thoughts. So I think that was a really big to me, and it's not even a failure. It was just a probably my lowest moment. And I think it's taken a lot more time, but I think it's probably been the best thing for me. So, yeah.
And it's really great of you to phrase that in the sense that of just working on yourself introspectively and stuff, and very good props to you for committing to that sort of work because it's not easy.
It's not, yeah.
So very good on you.
And I think too, with that was because I hadn't been artistic in a long time. Was I would take maybe online dance classes, or I moved back to Munford while my license is processed. I taught Munford High School band again. Thank you, Gary Fight, for that connection. And and then I also taught at Showstars Dance Academy. So it was, I hadn't taught in a long time. That's another artistic area I love. And so while I was waiting for kind of my new life to begin, I felt happiest being embodied, movement, art, and creating those new habits. But just, yeah, I think like always incorporating that into my life. We'll just, again, that's how I function as a human. So.
Yeah. I love how you talk about just art being necessary to function too. When you've been doing it for such a long time, it's kind of hard to quit, so.
Yeah.
I think that's really great that you mentioned that. There's one quick thing that I want to touch on. This is a very big pivot from the kind of heavier material we're talking about. But one thing that was very interesting to me is you talked about moving to Austin. Like one of the first things you did was sign up for a class, and it seems to me like in musical theater culture, like there's this perpetual like. I'm sorry, my stomach's cramping. But there's like a perpetual like a course culture, like taking classes with other people and like speech classes, or you were talking about things like that. Could you kind of dive into like that culture of musical theater? Because like in other areas of music, that's not necessarily a thing where we just like, at some point we just don't do that anymore. You know what I mean?
Like taking class with other people?
Yeah, like because you were talking about taking a ballet class and stuff like that. Is that super evident in like musical theater culture? Just like take classes with other people all the time?
Yeah, because it keeps your skills up, especially with dance. Now, voice lessons, that's different. That's like you and the voice teacher. But acting classes, dance classes, you keep your skills up. And also it's good to, even though you're in a class setting, you still are performing for other people, which can be good or bad. You can feel super competitive trying to, outdo this one girl who's really good. Or it's like you're in a class of friends and sort of supporting each other. My favorite, there was a time, sometimes I get intimidated, but now it's just like, no, it makes me work harder and like be more mindful of details. And in acting classes, it's just good to see other people make choices. Okay. And I think, if you don't use it, you lose it kind of thing. Maybe not as much acting, but especially dance. Like there's just so much technical stuff you have to like maintain. And as we get older too, it goes away. So that is kind of the culture. And it's also just a community. Like musical theater people are, I think, the best people. And we're just all really close, and it's just fun to be together watching and supporting one another. That's
fantastic. I wish that was more evident in other areas of the arts, to like keep taking classes and stuff with other people. And yeah, some of the performing arts, like that was when you were talking about, oh yeah, I took a class, and I was like, well, like you've been doing this a long time, you still take classes? That's so cool to me that you would perpetuate your art in that way. So that's super interesting, and I wish it was more prevalent in other areas of the arts. So
yeah, and I think too, we're always learning just as humans, but even times have just changed so much, especially after COVID. So you're just different. So you learn things in a different way compared to when you were 16, in different life circumstances. So I think it's just always important to keep learning and growing too.
Fantastic. Cool. Yeah. Well, Leighann, this has been great.
This has been so
great. This has been one of my favorite interviews in a long time. I learned so much today too. Like this is I had a blast today. So thank you so much. You are a fantastic guest. And
thank you.
One thing we did talk about before the podcast started was doing a little follow-up, see how things are going in Austin. So maybe in a few weeks, whenever you're ready, just give me a holler. And if you're not in town, we'll do it over like Zoom or something like that. But I think a follow-up would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'm excited.
Cool. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Keegan.
And we are out of here. Oh, BCAM. All right.
Bye, BCAM. Bye, everyone.
All right, see you again. Thank you all so much for listening. This has been The Modern Working Musician. Just a few updates. Be on the lookout for merchandise coming soon, as well as an updated website for all things Modern Working Musician. You can find us everywhere at keeganpalooza.com/modernworkingmusician or on all social media at modern working musician. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you have a great day.